Bridges working down low. White will defend. And a quick 2-0 lead.
And we saw a lot of that from Bridges to these teams. We saw the Knicks increase that pace in Game 4.
In the corner, White three. Cross court. Brown, Brunson in the way. Nice spin, nice fake, and he gets the two.
Well, Brown, he recognized.
White, it's a three, closed ties.
A little bit more ball movement for the Celtics.
Bridge in this series, weaving briskly, taking it and zopping the other way is Brown to White.
Fan base, what a back cut.
By Brown. Long shot. Browns left free from three. Got it. That they played the Pistons. Here is Robinson. Shot clock is at 3. McBride. Long shot. Paint faces the double. Hart in the paint. Got it the other way. 4-on-2 to the hole. Spin, a kick and a feed. Horford free. Robinson back in. The hesitation, the jab, and the whip. Brown three trying to being done by Boston. In the corner. Soft to Holiday. Underneath and open. Brunson fearlessly attacked her. Fakes the three. Defense flies by. And a drive and a feed. Hart three. Side. Kicks it out. Hart three. Three. White, he'll launch a three. Meticulously working. Is down to 3. Screen. Switch. Shot.
Not at play here.
Hart with a 3 over Cornette. Holiday makes a move and Brunson getting some help from Cornette. Hart 3.
Your Cornette and Holiday.
Josh Hart with 8. White, big night from 3 and he can for Brown working through traffic. Pritchard with a 3. Clock at 2. Doubled by Cornette. Brunson. He'll work. He'll shoot over Cornette on low. Cornette's open. Pritchard trying to gouge the lane. Horford 3. Rebound Horford. Holiday 3 from 3. Pritchard dances and puts up a blink an eye. Good feed. The cut. Brunson meets him. Driving Brown. Cutting his really showing up. Cornette closing a bit. Towns inside. Puts on the brakes. Pritchard 3. Hits itemizing it. Stutter step in the Brown. What a pass to.
In the hallowed halls of TD Garden, where the echoes of past glories reverberate through the rafters, the Boston Celtics faced a crucible. The parquet floor, once a stage for legends, bore witness to a narrative steeped in drama, resilience, and the inexorable march of time. The Celtics, trailing 3-1 in the Eastern Conference semifinals against the New York Knicks, entered Game 5 with their season teetering on the brink. The absence of Jason Tatum, their talismanic forward felled by a ruptured Achilles tendon in Game 4, cast a long shadow over the team. His injury not only robbed Boston of its leading scorer, but also its emotional anchor, leaving a void that statistics alone could not quantify. Jaylen Brown, the Finals MVP and now the de facto leader, bore the weight of expectation. His performances thus far had been a study in contrasts, flashes of brilliance tempered by bouts of inconsistency. In Game 5, Brown's resolve would be tested as never before, with the hopes of a city resting squarely on his shoulders. The Knicks, conversely, arrived in Boston with momentum on their side. Jalen Brunson, orchestrating the offense with surgical precision, had been instrumental in New York's resurgence. His 39-point, 12-assist performance in Game 4 exemplified his ability to seize the moment. The game commenced with the Celtics exhibiting a blend of urgency and cohesion. Brown attacked the rim with ferocity, while Derek White and Peyton Pritchard provided perimeter scoring. The defense, anchored by Al Horford, displayed a renewed intensity, disrupting the Knicks' rhythm and forcing turnovers. Yet, as the game progressed, the Knicks' resilience surfaced. Brunson's poise under pressure, coupled with Karl-Anthony Towns' dominance in the paint, began to erode Boston's lead. Mikal Bridges and OG Anunoby contributed timely baskets, exemplifying the depth and balance that had become New York's hallmark. In the third quarter, a palpable shift occurred. The Celtics' offense stagnated, marred by missed opportunities and lapses in execution. The Knicks capitalized, embarking on a 17-0 run that silenced the once raucous crowd. Brunson's leadership was evident as he orchestrated the offense with a maestro's touch, exploiting mismatches and creating open looks for his teammates. Despite a valiant effort by Brown, who finished with 28 points, the Celtics could not stem the tide. The Knicks' cohesion and composure under duress proved insurmountable. As the final buzzer sounded, signaling a 127-102 victory for New York, the reality of the Celtics' elimination set in. The loss marked a poignant chapter in Boston's storied history. The absence of Tatum, the emergence of Brown, and the resilience of the Knicks coalesced into a narrative rich with pathos and complexity. For the Celtics, the off-season beckons a time for reflection, healing, and the pursuit of redemption. There are evenings in Boston that feel like funerals, not of men, but of ideas, like the uncheckable notion that basketball, when played in a green jersey, is somehow more sacred. The Celtics' loss in Game 5 was not just a defeat, it was a ritual unmasking, where banners hung like reminders of an unrepeatable past and parquet creaked not with legacy, but with weight. The Knicks, yes, the Knicks, that famously dysfunctional Manhattan soap opera, are suddenly a team that doesn't collapse, doesn't laugh at itself, doesn't consult therapy mid-playoff series. They are, astonishingly, a team that plays basketball, and plays it well. It is said that Jalen Brunson was not born but carved, like a sculpture left behind by a craftsman who then vanished into the mists of the Hudson River. His Game 5 performance wasn't explosive, it was surgical, the quiet kind of dominance that creeps into a box score like water through marble. His footwork, precise. His decision-making, calm. His ego, hidden, possibly packed in his overnight bag somewhere between his backup sneakers and his existential awareness of Madison Square Garden. While Boston scrambled for answers, Brunson didn't raise his voice. He raised expectations. A 127-102 victory on the road, in the house that Bird built, and he did it as if you were playing in a library. Meanwhile, Jaylen Brown stood at the intersection of valiant effort and lonely responsibility. With Tatum's Achilles sulking somewhere in a medical report, Brown had the floor and the burden. He drove, he dunked, he gestured toward the heavens, but every act felt like a sonnet recited into a hurricane. His 28 points weren't so much a statement as a eulogy. This was his team, briefly. And now, it's also his burden. The Celtics role players, gallant, anonymous men like Peyton Pritchard, who always looks slightly surprised to be on the court, and Derek White, who plays with the perpetual anxiety of someone who forgot to turn the stove off, gave what they could. But when Horford starts shooting threes like he's trying to break a family curse, you know something's gone cosmically awry. By the third quarter, the crowd had turned ecclesiastical. They did not cheer, they prayed. And when the Knicks unleashed that 17-0 run, an act of violence that felt personal, the faithful sat in silence, as if watching the collapse of the Roman Republic on a Tuesday evening. Karl Anthony Towns, once mocked as the man who looked like a superstar in a vacuum literally, if you watched him in Minnesota, played as if his therapist told him it was okay to be dominant. His inside game bruised, his outside game mocked gravity, and his rebounds were less athletic feats than acts of reclamation. The Celtics frontcourt, meanwhile, looked like men who had recently remembered they were eligible for retirement. And still, it's impossible not to romanticize Boston in ruin. The way Marcus Smart once threw himself into passing lanes like a soldier into artillery fire, gone. The way Paul Pierce bled for buckets, history. Now the Garden plays host to moral victories, not actual ones. Coach Joe Mazzulla stood on the sidelines like a man who had misplaced his destiny. His rotations resembled Cubist art, abstract, confusing, possibly brilliant if you squinted hard enough. But in the end, he, like his team, seemed to be waiting for Tatum to walk through that tunnel and save them. He never did. The Knicks, for their part, looked oddly serene. OG Anunoby, a man whose facial expression has never changed since the Obama administration, drilled corner threes like he was filing taxes. Mikal Bridges looked born for this chaos. Even the usually unpredictable Emmanuel quickly played as if he had briefly found inner peace at a Zen retreat sponsored by Pat Riley. As the fourth quarter unwound, the Garden didn't boo. It sighed when the buzzer sounded, signaling the end not just of a game, but of a belief system. Some fans clapped politely, a standing ovation not for the victors, but for the ghosts of red or by hand the smell of old cigars. And somewhere in the press row, a beat reporter typed the words Celtics eliminated with all the solemnity of a man chiseling an epitaph. For Boston, the season ends not with a bang, but with post-game interviews. Jaylen Brown, ever the statesman, talked of learning experiences and the fight ahead. Al Horford, a man who's been in the league since the invention of the shot clock, or so it feels, nodded stoically. Mazzulla promised improvement. which in May sounds a lot like poetry. But the night belonged to New York, that old adversary turned modern assassin. They didn't just win a game. They issued a statement. The East belongs to the present, not the past. And as the Celtics filed into the tunnel, heads bowed, one could almost hear the whispers of the parquet. We were champions once. But memory is not momentum, and history does not play defense. There is a strange, romantic cruelty in Boston's playoff exits, as if the gods who once gifted the city 11 titles in 13 years now demand yearly sacrifice in the form of hope. And on this May evening, the Knicks were simply the executioners in better suits. The third part of this drama opens not on the court, but in the rafters, where faded banners hang like royal decrees from a kingdom that forgot how to rule. The Garden is sacred, yes, but even the Sistine Chapel loses some of its awe when you start leaking points from the perimeter. The Knicks didn't just play basketball, they conducted a cultural reset. Josh Hart, looking like he was late for a pickup game in 1978, was everywhere and nowhere, defending as though he owed someone rent. His closeouts were sermons. His rebounds? Pure theft. It wasn't just Hart, of course. The entire Knicks team moved like a single organism, one that had finally metabolized all its previous dysfunction, breakups, and Dolan-induced curses. They passed, cut, rotated with the clarity of a franchise that's decided not to be embarrassed anymore. Contrast that with Boston, where the offense resembled a desperate search for someone, anyone, to just do something. Without Tatum, the Celtics were a Shakespearean tragedy. All nobility, no solution. Jaylen Brown was Hamlet, asking if to drive or not to drive, while Horford was King Lear, raging against the dying of his vertical leap. Meanwhile, New York's bench, a motley crew of second chances and forgotten draft picks, played like they'd discovered a loophole in reality. Quentin Grimes, previously known as that guy who sometimes shoots, suddenly became that guy who hits every back-breaking shot you thought you could live with. The Celtics tried zone. The Celtics tried man. The Celtics tried prayer. None worked. In those long, cruel third and fourth quarters, every Knicks bucket was another chisel stroke into the marble face of Boston pride. And oh, the irony. For years, Celtics fans mocked Knicks fans for their illusions of grandeur. It's our year, New Yorkers would say in October, usually delusional by Thanksgiving. But now it's May, and the Knicks are rolling through playoff rounds like they're clearing out back taxes. By the final 5 minutes of the game, it felt less like a contest and more like performance art. Julius Randle, previously known for postseason vanishing acts, played like a man who'd finally located his inner adult. Even when he wasn't scoring, he was setting the emotional tempo, staring down defenders, walking with that purposeful strut that only comes when you've been forgiven by your city. On the Boston bench, there was silence, not resignation, but bewilderment. As if each player was remembering how good the team looked in February and asking, silently, where the spell had gone. Where was the rhythm, the motion, the suffocating defense? Lost in time. Buried under bad switches and missed corner threes. And in the stands, Boston fans began what they always do when the present turns sour. They began reaching backward. Remember 2008? Someone muttered. Pierce would never let this happen, said another. At least we're not Philly, added a third, which is how Bostonians say grace. Back on the court, the Knicks bench stood, arms linked, the kind of moment usually reserved for churches or coronations. And when the final buzzer sounded, not a dagger, but a drumbeat, the scoreboard read 127-102, but the message was simpler. The Celtics were out, and the Knicks were real. Then came the hugs, the handshakes, the ceremonial exchange of good games that everyone knows are half-lies. Matsula crossed the court to offer Thibodeau a handshake that felt more like an apology, or perhaps a confession. You were better prepared. You deserve this. The Knicks didn't celebrate wildly. No champagne, no confetti, just a quiet nod toward inevitability. This was not the mountaintop. This was just a rest stop. And if they looked tired, it was because they understood. Being taken seriously comes with a tax. Boston, on the other hand, was already bracing for the Inquisition. The sports radio shows were sharpening their knives. Blow it up, some would say. Trade Brown, others would mutter. Fire Matsula, said the usual suspects. But all of them, in their own way, were asking the same question. What happened to our myth? Because Boston's problem wasn't just losing. It was being reminded, in excruciating high definition, that legacy cannot be substituted for strategy. That banners don't block shots. That the Garden is just a building when no one's defending the pick and roll. And somewhere deep in the tunnel, where the walls are lined with photos of past glory, Jaylen Brown stopped and looked, just briefly. He stared at a black and white photo of a team that won everything without Twitter, load management, or podcasts. And then, without a word, he walked on, past the echoes, past the banners, past the weight of everything that wasn't enough.